What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined by all of you here live in St. Vincent College, Latrobe, Pennsylvania, as we conclude day 2 of Pittsburgh Steelers training camp. It has been a wild ride, an early glimpse into what this Pittsburgh Steelers team can look like in 2024. And so far, the reviews have been good ones. That being said, we are still without Russell Wilson. We got a pretty big update on what is to come and what he is dealing with, and some details on what he is looking at moving forward. Justin Fields' performance in the meantime has been a bit of a roller coaster ride, but there have been some moments of shine that we definitely have to address. Meanwhile, Kyle Allen and the others look good. There are reports of a massive, and I mean massive, wide receiver target, not one, but 3 of them that the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking at, are quote unquote convinced for the start of the season. We will dive into all of that, plus who stands out in day 2 of Steelers training camp, because so far it has been a good one. I hope everybody that is watching is having a great Friday as we dive into the weekend, and there is no better time to talk about the news than now. Let's talk about the reports coming out of DK Pittsburgh Sports, which say that the Pittsburgh Steelers are quote unquote convinced that at some point they will land one of 3 names before the start of the season. One of 3 massive names. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk is one of those names, but the other 2, DK Metcalf and Tyreek Hill, are the 2 that the Pittsburgh Steelers, and one source tells DK Pittsburgh Sports' Chris Halleck, are convinced they will have on their roster before the start of the season. That is massive. That is a day, as we walked in here, it happened overnight. Talked to Chris today just to clear up any questions that I had and to make sure that this is 100% solid. And, well, Chris had more to say to me than he had in that article. And everything that he told me is, yeah, I have been told that this is something that they're very confident in, and something that has been not just a one-day process, but several days, if not weeks in the making, to get to this story and where we are moving forward. Now, I'll give my thoughts here in a second, but obviously you got to do your due diligence in the reporting, and I think Chris has. I don't look at Chris. I trust Chris. I have always trusted Chris, and I mean, Chris was one time on this show. He was a member of this show. So anything that comes out of his mouth and onto his pad or paper or laptop or whatever, I'm going to look at and say, there's got to be some truth here. Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf, and Brandon Ayuk. I will say that there are some problems when it comes to these trade theories. I mean, we have talked about DK Metcalf and how I have been told other things, and I'll stand by those other things when it comes to the Steelers not really being interested in a DK Metcalf where we currently stand. But Tyreek Hill is one where Tua Tagovailoa just signed a massive 4-year deal, a 4-year, $212 million contract, pays him over $50 million per season. Tyreek Hill's taken up over $30 million of cap space over the next 2 years and $56 million the year after that. There's an out, but that out is $22 million in dead space. And you got to be thinking that, yeah, the Pittsburgh Steelers probably don't want to take on that cap space. It sounds pretty wild. And Tyreek Hill has not been a name that, to me, made any sense to the Pittsburgh Steelers. People have talked about it. They have tried to convince themselves that it is going to happen. But to be totally honest, I look at Tyreek Hill and say, man, dude, I don't know how that gets done when it comes to Pittsburgh, or how they are willing to come up with that money. I get that right now the Steelers have some cap space and they could come up with more of it, but they'd have to come up with another $15 million in cap space just to cover his contract this season, and then another 34 next year to cover his cap hit in 2025. After that, $56 million in cap space he takes up if you don't move on from him. I think there are problems when it comes to just that alone, and it comes to the Tyreek situation and where the Pittsburgh Steelers stand and how they go about things. I get it that right now you don't have a quarterback contract, but man, $30+ million right off the bat for a guy like Tyreek Hill. Yeah, he easily changes your football team and makes massive things happen. And maybe the Miami Dolphins are looking at it and saying, we paid Tua, but we can't pay everybody. Jalen Waddle got a deal maybe Tyreek is the guy that gets cut or gets snubbed, or you have to move on from this offseason just to make sure that you could pay everybody moving forward. But I don't know, man. I look at it and say this year, Brandon Ayuk makes sense because he's $14 million. Next year, he's 30, and you could come up with 30 next year. Tyreek is $30 million right now, and that is a massive chunk of change to take on. DK Metcalf, the problem with the DK situation in my head is only because is Seattle looking to part ways with DK Metcalf? Because I haven't really heard that they're looking to trade him, and I don't really know why they would. They already signed him. They feel good about it. They have a quarterback under contract with a big deal, and then they have other options everywhere. Tyler Lockett's getting older. He's not going to require a boatload of money. You have a running back that's cheap. Your offensive line is pretty good, and your defense is good, but I don't really see any massive contracts. I don't know why the Seattle Seahawks would want to get rid of DK Metcalf, but I guess if they are looking to, the Pittsburgh Steelers are interested in making something happen. And then obviously Brandon Ayuk, which is the biggest name in Pittsburgh right now, a name that I think everybody is tired of talking about. I think I'm tired of talking about it. What I have heard is that from right now, where we stand, because obviously this comes out, you make your phone calls, you do your digging. The Steelers made the phone calls. They tried. Nothing happened. They said, okay. And currently they're kind of sitting back and just waiting for things to happen. They believe something will happen, and they believe that at some point they'll have an opportunity to strike. And I think that's where this report comes from, is that the Steelers think that these three names will be able to be strike worthy. They will get an opportunity to make a move for at least one of them before the season. It's just a matter of which one, which is huge and should leave a lot of hope that a deal could get done. And for anybody sitting around saying the Steelers aren't going to get a wide receiver, I don't think that would be on the Steelers. I think it would be everybody else. If the Steelers don't end up with a wide receiver trade before week one, I would believe that you look at it and say that's because other teams didn't want to make a wide receiver trade, not because the Pittsburgh Steelers weren't trying, because they were very open and honest that they've been digging. And Omar Khan said it yesterday that he's looking to get something done. We'll dive into more of what that brings on top of so much from training camp today. And I mean, one wide receiver, a massive name in Pittsburgh, saying that he's not really looking for more wide receiver help as the lights go out, as they do every day. And he's just chucking along, believing that they have the team in place right now. But first, let's answer Michael's question here. Appreciate you as always, Pat. Might be the most likely X factor on offense. Hearing nothing but great things. Also heard Troy Fautano got his welcome to the NFL moment from TJ. Troy Fautano certainly got a welcome to the NFL moment from TJ. Pat Freiermuth looks like the best wide receiver, George Pickens included, on the football field the last 2 days. He's all over the place. He's running great routes. He had one drop today on the goal line. That was definitely something that stood out early in practice. But for the most part, he has been the guy to watch, the name for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He looks like their wide receiver too. I talked about it yesterday. He is definitely a stud out here. And I think it's a big year. I mean, people have tossed out the $12 million a year contract idea for Pat Freiermuth. If he's playing the way he looks right now, he's worth it. I think he's worth it either way, but that's a big day for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Noah, how do the tight ends, offensive line, and running back game look? The tight ends look really good. The offensive line looks pretty good as well. They still have Broderick and Dan Moore as the starting offensive tackles, with Broderick on the right and Dan Moore on the left. I don't believe that's going to change until they have to change it. Zach Frazier had a bad snap yesterday, but for the most part has looked pretty good. Najee Harris looks electric. Him and Jack Coletto today teamed up. Jack led him right through the hole, and Najee burst through for a massive gain. And it was just a moment where you said, that's old school Arthur Smith football. That's Pittsburgh Steelers football. And you love to see it. So they look great. The running game looks good. The offensive line looks good. And there's a lot of two tight end sets from Pittsburgh right now. So we're looking pretty good. Everything looks pretty good when it comes to the Steelers offense. I got minimal complaints. We will dive into what this means and who looked good. Obviously, Russell Wilson is the next thing we should talk about. He updated it today saying that it's a calf injury. Something popped the other day when he was doing sled work during their conditioning tests. He's taking it slow. He's ready to go. He said, if this was a game, I'd be playing. There's no questions there, which makes you feel good that all of the people who are sitting around being skeptical and, the conspiracy theorists, which I am certainly one of them, are saying, oh, well, you never know what's going on or if this is real. Do you guys see this fly? going just nuts on the camera right now because this thing's all over me. Um, and how if this was a normal day, he'd be fine. That being said, it's early in camp. There's no need to rush him out on the field. And it gives the Steelers an opportunity to look at Justin Fields. I think that's what this is. I don't believe that there's a quarterback competition in Pittsburgh this year. I don't even think that there's a slight quarterback competition in Pittsburgh right now. But I do believe that the Steelers want to see what they have in Justin Fields and get an opportunity to test him out with the number ones as much as possible. And there's no reason to put Russ on the field because, well, Russ is going to be there all season long. You might as well see what you have in Justin and use this as an opportunity to do so while keeping Russ fresh and not really pushing the limits with a new a new injury, a new season this year at 35 years old. It doesn't make a whole ton of sense. Russ updated that. He said he should be good to go. I don't expect him to practice this week. I think it's a next week situation. Pads come on Tuesday. That's kind of my first benchmark of when I could see Russell Wilson back on the field as soon as possible. In the meantime, Justin Fields looked good today, much better than he did yesterday. Yesterday, there was that one viral pass of him to Van Jefferson over our deep over Dante Jackson and Demonte KZ, and everybody's freaking out. That's the dime. He looks good. Louis Riddick saying QB1 in Pittsburgh. There were a lot of bad passes yesterday. Yesterday was, he looked really good at some times and he looked really bad at other times. And I mean, equally as good to equally as bad. So if you looked at that Van Jefferson pass and said, man, that was phenomenal, think of that the other way because there were certainly some of those as well. Today looked much more convincing and much more consistent, which was good. He had some good passes. He didn't hang in the pocket as long as he typically hangs in the pocket, which is too long. It was a bit of a slower day for Justin, which is good. When things start to get real fast, he kind of starts to make some bad decisions. It kind of feels as if he's processing the game a bit slower than it's moving, which is not good. You know, it takes him a second to make a decision. Next thing you know, there's guys in the backfield making a bad pass, so on and so forth. Today, it was smooth. There were some good passes to George Pickens. There was a great pass to Calvin Austin, a phenomenal pass in the middle of the field. Calvin came off the slot, straight down the sideline, beat Beanie Bishop, who we're going to talk about here in a minute, and looked really, really good. There were a lot of moments in Justin with that. I don't know what he went on today, but yesterday it was about even completions to incompletions, and today he was much more in the positive than he was in the negative. The standouts on offense, excuse me, guys, the standouts on offense before we go to defense. Roman Wilson was a guy that stood out today and had a really good day. He had a couple of really good catches from both Justin Fields, John Rice Plumlee, and Kyle Allen, especially over the middle of the field, was able to work zones and find open spots and utilize that ability from the slot. He made a couple of contested catches. He caught a touchdown in the goal line situation. I thought Roman Wilson looked really good for the Pittsburgh Steelers on day 2. That's a big day for the Steelers because Roman has not looked good to this point. He didn't look good in OTAs. He didn't look good in minicamp. He didn't look good the first day of training camp. And it's not that he looked bad. It's just that at no point did Roman have that day where you said, there he is. That's why the Steelers don't need to trade for a wide receiver. They've been waiting and waiting for something to happen. And I think today was a step forward, which is massive. And Calvin Austin looked good as well, which is also good. Van Jefferson continues to look good for the Steelers, and that's a name to watch. On the defensive side of the ball, 2 names for you. I agree that one of them is still a bit of a long way away from being consistent enough and showing out enough to make him a household name in Pittsburgh. And the other one is, I don't know, iffy. And one good day should not be a justification for 2 bad years, but still positive days are really good. And today was a very positive day for both of these guys. The first one's Beanie Bishop. That dude over the last 2 days, outside of Deshaun Elliott, has looked like the best defensive player on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, that does not mean he is the best defensive player. It does not mean that he's having a more of an impact than TJ Watt or Cam Hayward or Alex Highsmith or Minkah Fitzpatrick or Joey Porter or Dante Jackson. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that at this point in time, we have seen TJ do TJ things. We have seen Cam do Cam things. We have seen Joey and Minka do Joey, Minka, Patrick Queen things. All of those things have already happened. Beanie's the new guy. He's coming in here. He was given the first opportunity to run with the ones in the slot corner. He made the most of it. He got that opportunity on day 2. And yesterday I said to you guys, it's too early. They're going to test everybody. They're going to continue to rotate everybody, and we don't know who the final piece is going to be on this defense. It's too early to tell. And I was thinking of last year when they had a slot cornerback competition and Duke Dawson went out there on day 1 and everybody hyped up Duke Dawson, and then he never took starting reps again. It went in a constant rotation until they landed on Chandon Sullivan. Today was Beanie Bishop again, and immediately I went, that's new. That's something that stands out. And then he played well, and you just looked at it and said, Beanie's having a day. I don't know why you would take him out of here until he falls enough where you have to take him out of there, which maybe that happens. And as an undrafted rookie, you kind of expect it to happen. But at the same time, right now, he's looked good, and he's looked good enough to say, yeah, that's a guy that you need to start paying attention to if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, because there is an actual chance, and it's 2 days in, and it's way too early to make any promises or guarantees or anything like that. But I will say that after today and yesterday, there's an actual chance Beanie Bishop is your starting slot corner in week 1. And that is crazy because an undrafted guy should not be in that case. But I mean, if you're the best, if they brought you in here for a reason, they brought you in here for a reason. The other guy is DeMarvin Leal, who had a phenomenal day. Got to the quarterback 2 or 3 times, ran, I believe it was Jaylen Warren down on the sideline one time, didn't allow him to get into yards. That was a great play as well. Afterwards, he said that it wasn't that he was out of shape last year, but this year he just feels ready to go. He feels 100%. He feels like this is a good year for him and somewhere that he could grow, a season where he could really take a step forward. I think you saw that today. He looks a lot faster, a lot more athletic. I don't know what kind of shape he's in compared to last year because he wouldn't give us numbers of if he lost weight or gained weight or whatever. But it was a good day for DeMarvin Leal. You need more good days out of DeMarvin Leal, but that dude's got so much potential that I think people after 2 years of disappointment forgot that he was a 3rd-round pick that maybe should have went 2nd or 1st round if the draft was a little different and he had maybe a more impressive combine or more impressive this or more impressive that. But he was teetering that line for sure. I think that I think that's a name to watch moving forward, and it's certainly a good sign for the Steelers, who are looking for all the depth they could possibly get. If DeMarvin Leal is ready to take a step forward, that's huge because he could be a piece of your future if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers that you are going to rely on for certain. Let's dive into some questions before we continue, but first, we got a word here from our boys over at BetterHelp. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Have you ever found yourself scrolling on social media, maybe spending too much time on whatever platform you're addicted to and thinking, man, why am I feeling down? Why do I find myself not finding the joy that social media is supposed to give me? That's because comparison is the thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives, but therapy can help. It can help you focus on what you want instead of what other people have, so you can start living your best life. I'm somebody who's advocated for therapy for a long time. You constantly see me wearing the sweatshirt, going to therapy is cool. I've reaped the benefits for years, and I think everybody who's thinking about it should add that to their agenda as well, because in one way or another, it's very helpful. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/allsteelers today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/allsteelers. We are back. Appreciate everybody for jumping on. Now, I will answer everybody's questions. I'm sifting through them now. You got to apologize, or I have to apologize. You got to forgive me because Nick is still in New York. Hope he's doing well. Hope he's enjoying the concert. Hope he's seeing all the headlines that he's missing, getting an opportunity to talk about. I'm sifting through the questions, trying to find as many as I possibly can for you guys. Keep tossing them in the chat. I will answer all of them pretty much before I head out of here. We are live from Latrobe. I will say it is 4:05, and if you guys have been following along long enough, you know the last couple of years these podcasts were at 6, 7 o'clock at night. It was crazy. So to be doing this at 4 o'clock in the afternoon just feels weird. I'm only on like my third coffee today. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope this is getting you through that final hour of work for real, because I'm about to hit it and hit the road, and I can make it home for dinner as well, which is a crazy time. So I appreciate all of you guys. Let's start with some that we got going on here. Hawk Tua girl just signed for $212 million, $53 million a year. First off, then I saw another comment out there saying that's the fantasy football name of the year. It most certainly is, my friend. That is a phenomenal name. Massive deal. I think it does potentially shake up any thoughts of a Tyreek Hill trade. I still am very skeptical that is a possibility, but look it, man. I got to trust the reports, and I got to trust people that I trust. Chris is somebody I trust, and if he's hearing things, sometimes they're out there, man, and you just got to roll with it. You got to pay attention, because I don't always have all the details. I don't always have all the insight, but others do. And if you trust those others, some of them I do, some of them I don't. This one, I trust Chris when he says something, so you got to go from there. Who says no? Steelers receive wide receiver CeeDee Lamb from the Cowboys, and their and the Cowboys receive a 2025 first round pick, a 2026 first round pick, and quarterback Justin Fields. I am sorry. This might have been in the chat yesterday. No. Big no. I'm not giving up 2 first round picks for CeeDee Lamb. That's crazy. Way too much. Maybe 1. I'd feel good about 1. I'm not giving up Justin Fields. That's wild as well. There are all the reports out there of George Pickens freaking out at the coach yesterday. And then, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's Ray Fittipaldo said, if he doesn't be careful, he's the next guy out. I could see that as a possibility if things continue to go downhill between George Pickens and the Pittsburgh Steelers coaching staff, which I'm not saying that they are. I'm just going off of what Ray said. I could see maybe a second round pick or a third round pick in George Pickens, and maybe that sweetens the deal for a guy like CeeDee Lamb or a guy like Brandon Ayuk or maybe a guy like Tyreek Hill. Who knows? But it's certainly, I guess, a possibility. More realistic than 2 first round picks and Justin Fields. I get where you're coming from. You get it going, but I would say no. Carl, my man. Hey, no, appreciate you working hard for us today. As always, I took off work and got 18 holes in, and you're out. And that's a phenomenal Friday. That is a phenomenal Friday to go hit 18. I'm thinking about hitting at least 9, at least once a week while I'm out here after work, since we're getting done early. Most times I get back from training camp at, I don't know, 9, 10 o'clock at night. Yesterday I was home in time for dinner. It was wild times. Might go to Sharky's a night or two this weekend. But besides that, I think I got to get some golfing. Dante Jackson also balled out today. Dante Jackson did ball out today. Dante Jackson had a phenomenal day. He's looked good the last 2 days. Like, my thing about Dante Jackson is he's been impressive. There have been moments where it's borderline pass interference and it might get called in a game. But for the most part, he's been a dude who is been one of the more impressive guys throughout OTAs, throughout minicamp, and now throughout training camp. I think that's going to really benefit the Steelers. That's a guy that you should start paying attention to and feeling good about. There are a lot of people out there who are skeptical. You need another big name corner. I don't know about Jackson. What about Corey Trice surpassing Dante Jackson? Embrace that the Steelers have another starting corner who's young, athletic, very fast, and is capable of starting. That's who Dante Jackson is. He looks good. I think the upside of this guy and that secondary because of him is massive. What trade just joined? DK Pittsburgh Sports, Chris Halleck reported earlier today, real early this morning, that the Pittsburgh Steelers believe, they are quote unquote convinced, that they will get either Brandon Ayuk, Tyreek Hill, or DK Metcalf before the season. Wild times. We went through all those names. I will say I'm skeptical, but when Chris says something, I listen, man. And that's where I stand right now, is that I'm skeptical, but when Chris says something, I listen. And when it's coming from the team, I listen. And that's all we could do right now is listen and watch and think, hey, you never know. How did Corey Trice look? Corey Trice has been very quiet out there. Haven't seen much of Corey Trice. Not saying he's not playing, just haven't been paying attention really to anything he's been doing. So that means he hasn't really been making a lot of noise. There's a lot of camp left. You're going to put the pads on and so on and so forth. I think Darius Rush has looked good, but the starting corners look good, and Beanie Bishop is stealing the show, man. It's hard to focus on other guys when Beanie Bishop just looks as good as Beanie Bishop does at this point in the offseason. Continuum going here. If Beanie Bishop starts but Troy Fautanu doesn't, then I'm going to lose it. Look at, man, sometimes it's about opportunity and sometimes it's about how ready you are. Beanie Bishop has a great opportunity in front of him and he seems to be ready early. It's way too early to guarantee anything, but he looks ready early. And Troy Fautanu doesn't look ready and he doesn't have the best opportunity in front of him. That's where the Steelers sit, is they're not going to rush guys, but they're also not going to just make an excuse. And you could make an excuse for Dan Moore being your starting left tackle and saying, well, that's a better option than Troy because Troy needs to develop. And I believe that's the case right now. But if your options are we going to start a nobody or Beanie Bishop in the slot? The competition's not there. And I think the opportunity is bigger. Can we make a pick for the next jersey? Peyton Wilson, Patrick Queen, Joey Porter Jr., or Pat Freiermuth? That's a tough one, man. That's a tough one. I'd go Patrick Queen and Joey Porter. I'd go Joey Porter Jr., but Patrick Queen in the 6 is real tough. Like, that's a great jersey. So I would go those two, I believe. Pat Freiermuth, don't do anything till he signs an extension. Peyton Wilson, a little early. I'm not a rookie jersey guy. Never been a rookie jersey guy. Joey Porter Jr., Patrick Queen would be my my two. Heard rumors Arthur Smith is rocking the stash. Must be he's watching the show. I hope he is, man. I haven't been paying attention to his stash. Man, I got to look at his stash tomorrow. If his stash is out there, you guys might get a picture of the stash. If his stash is back, I can't make promises because my wife hates the mustache on me. She hates it, like refuses to kiss me for days. Can't stand it. There's a shot I go mustache if he's got a mustache. How's Jaylen Warren looking? Jaylen Warren looks good. He looks explosive. Him and Najee look very good. I think having a fullback in Jack Coletto is a complete game changer for the Steelers. I love Jack Coletto being out there. It is hard-nosed football. It works really well. I think Arthur Smith's offense is designed perfectly to have a fullback. I think it's massive. I could see Jack Coletto being a really important piece to this offense. And in the AFC North, when you got guys like Patrick Ricard, to have a fullback that you feel good in, like look at some playoff teams and the fullbacks that they have and how they utilize them. To have one of those guys, it's such a sneaky move and an important one. So Jaylen looks good. The running backs look real good. Do you think we could actually potentially get Tyreek Hill? Look at I don't know. I'm gonna keep saying the same things. I'm skeptical, but you just never know. I would look at it and say, if the Dolphins want to trade Tyreek Hill, I would not put it past the Pittsburgh Steelers that they make a phone call. But that's on the Dolphins. It's not on the Steelers. I have a hard time believing the Steelers are sitting around calling Miami going, hey, you want to negotiate for Tyreek? Because that's not going to lead to good things. I could see them going the other way around where Miami calls them. But I don't know. I'm listening to the reports. This is what the reports say, but I'm skeptical, man. I'm glad. This makes me feel really good. I'm glad. Did Justin Fields improve today? Justin Fields looked a lot better today than he looked yesterday, for sure. Thought he looked more accurate, more consistent, which was really big. A pretty good step forward. Had a good completion to Calvin Austin. Good completion to George Pickens that's going to go viral by the end of the night. It was a good day for Justin Fields. Kyle Allen also looked good. Kyle Allen was perfect on the day up until his second last pass, something like that. So Kyle Allen has looked like a really good number 3. And the Steelers quarterbacks, they look, I don't want to say impressive, but they don't look. There have been in years past where you're like, oh, this is as good as it gets. This is it. We haven't had those moments yet. Had a couple on day one with some passes, but they were made up for. You didn't get that in the past. What's the Steelers' biggest weakness so far? Wide receiver 2 would probably still be on that list. Like it's too early, so you're just going off of what you know. But I would say that is for sure their biggest one. Quarterback is a bit iffy, but I'm excited to see Russ out here. And I think Justin's got the potential to do some things. But wide receiver two for sure is where it still stands. No, really enjoy the podcast. Appreciate you. Have you seen the team run any kind of kickoff stop or kickoff schemes yet? No, they haven't practiced kickoffs. My guess, and this isn't confirmed. This isn't a fact. It's just my guess. My guess is that they are waiting for the refs to show up, whether that's next week or late next weekend at some point, so that they know for certain how to go about everything, because that's going to be a very big learning curve and they're going to have a lot of questions. So to have the refs there will help. And I believe that'll be the first time you see any kickoff stuff. Until then, it'll just be all installed during film and that kind of stuff, working with Danny Smith. And they'll wait to put it on the field when the refs show up. If there are any contract extensions done, will it affect this year's salary cap? Yes, it definitely could. Sometimes in a positive, sometimes in a negative. It just depends on the player. Like Cam Hayward, if you extend Cam Hayward, there's a good shot that you could spread his cap hit out and lower it for this upcoming season, which is a good thing. If you traded for a guy like Brandon Ayuk and then signed him, chances are that that cap hit goes up a little bit. And then the same with like a guy like Pat Fryermuth. If you sign Pat Fryermuth to an extension this offseason, chances are you're going to give him a little bit of money and then you'll go from there. So it's going to affect the salary cap a little bit, but I don't know where they stand. And right now, I don't expect any contract extensions to get done before the season outside of maybe Cam Hayward. Did you see wide receiver coach Zach Azani and George Pickens getting into it at practice yesterday? I'm thinking maybe a trade for CeeDee Lamb or Ayuk for Pickens might be in the future. Look, I'm trying really hard not to be super anti George Pickens because I feel like I come off that way sometimes, and I don't want to be that way. George Pickens did get into it today. It was like it was weird. There was a weird tension between the two. Somebody just bashed on this wall next to me. That's a little scary. Maybe it's George. Maybe he hears us talking about him. I don't know if they'd trade him, but I do think that when Ray Fittipaldo went on 93.7 The Fan and said, you know, he could be the next guy out if his attitude doesn't change because they've done all the things to fix this locker room and they're not going to let it be that guy. It would have to make sense. George Pickens for a Brandon Ayuk makes some sense. And if that's what you want to do, like if that's the route that the Steelers are looking to go, like it could make sense. I don't know. It's too early. I'm not going to be the guy that starts you trade George Pickens for this guy or you trade George Pickens for that guy. But if it continues, if there are issues leading up into the season, which the issues have never really stopped with George, then maybe it makes sense on paper. We'll say that. Trade Najee Harris for Darius Slayton. I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no. I think you keep Najee. We've talked about who is good, but who has looked bad or who has struggled in the first 2 days. Justin Fields struggled on day one for more than he succeeded for sure. Zach Frazier had a bad snap yesterday, but wasn't really noticeable the rest of the day, which is a good thing. Who else has looked bad? I don't know. I don't think anybody's really looked bad, to be honest with you. There hasn't been a lot of guys that have been like real down in the dumps. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, it's great to be on here and not talk about guys who've looked bad. So that's certainly a good thing. I don't think at any moment anybody looked real bad in the first 2 days here at camp. Are we going to accept that San Francisco doesn't have to trade Ayuk? With that being said, do you still think it's going to happen? Bart, that's a phenomenally worded question. I believe that the San Francisco 49ers are not currently talking to anybody, including the Pittsburgh Steelers, because from what I have been told is that Steelers were trying, and then they realized it's not going to happen. We're stopping, and we're done trying. That being said, they are very open, and Omar made it very open are very obvious yesterday that they are open to a wide receiver deal if it comes their way, but I think they're going to wait it out. And at some point, San Francisco is either going to sign Brandon Ayuk or they're going to trade him. And when that happens, if it's a trade, they'll probably call the Steelers and the Steelers can go from there. But for the time being, I think they're sitting back and they're going to wait. Been with you from the beginning. I've seen your sidekicks come and go. Love the passion. So keep up. Hey, I appreciate it, Gary. Very much so appreciate it. Would you trade Najee Harris and a first round pick for CD Lamb? Oh, that's a tough one. This is Skyler. Look at this is the best trade situation somebody has presented in a while. I will say that. Najee Harris and a first round pick for CD Lamb probably gets the job done. Oh, that would be so tough. That would be so tough. I'd have to sit down. I'd have to really evaluate the running back market and see where you get your next running back behind Jalen Warren. Cordell Patterson would have to be healthy. Oh, it would be tough. It would be tough. This is a good one. This is a really, really good one. I would say maybe. I'm going to leave it as a maybe. I'm leaning yes. I really am leaning yes. I think you could figure it out. But that being said, you got to figure it out. So, I would say maybe. I would say a strong maybe. Why are people so high on Justin Fields? He has done nothing in the NFL besides being a turnover machine. Justin Fields has a ton of potential in the NFL. Is he ready to start this year for the Pittsburgh Steelers? No. And we should stop talking about him potentially starting for the Pittsburgh Steelers because it would never happen. But I think he's got a ton of potential, and I'm very excited to see what he brings to the field in a year. I'm very excited. It's the Russ thing, but it's the Tom Arth thing. It's the Mike Sullivan thing. It's being able to sit down and work with quarterback coaches, not one, but two of them, and really try to work it out and adjust your mechanics and be able to see the game faster and process things slower. And I don't know. There's so much that goes on to it, and I think he's got the potential to get it done. I'm excited to see where it is in a year. Um, if you could bet who the first rookie would be to take the field, who would it be? Who would be the first to take the snap? Zach Frazier would be the easy guess. I would say Zach Frazier's probably got the best shot. Besides that, Peyton Wilson would be my second guess because, I mean, depending on if the offense or defense goes out first, he could be the first guy out there. He's definitely going to play. He looks really good. He looks so fast. It's crazy how fast he looks. I want to see the pads come on, but he looks good. Um, is the George Pickens camp drama story overblown, or is it a real concern? Competition brings out fire. Could it be that instead? So competition does bring out fire. The problem is that what happened is George didn't block on an assignment that he was supposed to block on. Zach Azani, who is a no BS guy, Zach Azani, from the day he got here, I have been told Zach does not take it. He will tell you straight up what is going on and how disappointed he is. He will be as straightforward with you as you can get. He didn't block. Zach said something to him. George freaked out and got real upset about it. And then today, George was like, it was almost like he was avoiding him. It was very strange. I don't think it's overblown. I think it's a little bit early. I think it's a little bit early. I'm not going to say overblown, but a little bit early. If it continues, then it's not overblown. If it doesn't happen again and things are fine, cool. But the George Pickens drama has not ended in like almost a year. It's just story after story after story after story. And, there was the off season, so you forgot about it, but it just doesn't really go away. So that's where it becomes a concern is this is not the first time. And to be totally honest, people say like, oh, well, the Steelers are good at hiding this stuff. They are, which means that if they're not right now, it's a concern. Who has a Trubisky and Pickett jersey? Certainly not me. It's me. um, if the Steelers don't get a wide receiver 2, should they go get Gilmore and make the defense A+ with Sutton back in week 8? I think Stephon Gilmore would be a great move for the Steelers either way, but I want to see what Corey Trice and Darius Rush bring before any move like that is made, just because those are second-year guys with a ton of potential, and Stephon Gilmore isn't going to sign tomorrow. So I would like to see what they have in pads for a couple of days or maybe a week or two, and then make the decision on that one. Has Zach Frazier or Troy Fautano looked better? There's no pads on, so it's tough to say. Zach had a bad snap. He's taken more first-team reps than Troy Fautano is. Troy jumped off sides today, so, I would say even. Do I think the Steelers will trade for Tyler Lockett? No. I don't. I think Tyler Lockett would be great, and I think if Russ could get his hands on Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf, he would love to, but I'm going to say no. I don't think that one's a real possibility. You're saying Justin looked good, but the Post Gazette saying otherwise. How is that, Noah? I mean, two people could have two separate opinions. It's it's pretty obvious. When it comes to what I'm saying, I made it very clear yesterday that I thought Justin looked worse than people made it out to be. That he had a lot of bad passes. I think today Justin looked a lot better. There were obviously some misses, but Justin took a pretty, I don't want to say pretty big, but Justin took a step forward, and that was good. It's only day two, so what is a step forward from day one to day two? But if you're judging yesterday off of today, it's an improvement for sure. Is Zach Frazier the biggest lock of the rookie class to start week one? I would say yes, but I wouldn't classify him as a lock, only because I think Nate Herbig has a real shot to win the starting job, and that's going to be a fun competition once the pads come on. Um, Is Troy Fautano a bust? No chance. No chance. Even if Troy doesn't start his rookie year, he's not a bust. Like, he's the 20th pick in the draft. Nobody should be looking at this guy and saying he's ready to start day one no matter what. You go back to 10 years ago, first round picks didn't start. TJ Watt didn't start his rookie season until he earned the starting job. I mean, rookies should come in here with development. It's about potential. You draft guys for how good they could get, not how good they are right now. Troy at 20 is a dude who had so much potential in front of him that you could work with it. It's just a matter of slowing the game down. This is a pretty big step forward for these guys. So I think no, by no means is Troy a bust. What game am I looking forward to the most this year? Not Christmas. Not Christmas. I can tell you that one. Baltimore. I would say any of the Baltimore games are always my favorite, especially there because their press box is like in the stands pretty much. And I'm the type of guy, like, I'm talking smack. I'm not talking smack like about the game because I have to stay unbiased and I have to be just a reporter. But like, Ravens fans will sit in front of me and they'll turn around talking smack to me. So I'll talk smack back to them just because I like to get fired up and I like them to get fired up. So any game in Baltimore is always my favorite game. Um, how does Darnell Washington look? Hasn't been doing much. Hasn't really been doing much. They've been doing a lot of two tight end sets. He looks good in those, but I want to see the pads come on and really see how good this running game is. But he hasn't really been doing a whole ton. With all the 12 and 13 personnel we are hearing about, do you see the league being introduced to Darnell Washington? See, like, just like I said, he hasn't seen much, but I like this question because yes, I do think that the league will get introduced to Darnell Washington this year, and I think that the impact that he's going to bring to the Steelers is going to be pretty big. I like the two tight end sets. I think it works, especially if you go two tight ends and slap a fullback back there, man. Bring it back to the 90s. I love it. I love it. That's what they should be doing. I think they get introduced to Darnell Washington for sure. Do you think the Russell Wilson sore calf was real or a way to put Fields on the spot? No, I do think it's real. I think he tweaked it. But I do think that they're going to milk it. I don't believe that he can't go, but he's 35 years old. And I mean, people got to remember, like, Ben would practice once a week. The other 2 days, one of them would be like, I'm kind of out here, but whatever. And the other one, he was taking it off. So at that age, you're not practicing and you're not taking risks. Like, if you are hurting, you are sitting, because there is no point in putting Russell Wilson on the field if he's not 100% during training camp. He's been through enough training camps. I do think that they are milking it a little bit, or going to milk it a little bit, because they want to see what Justin Fields has, but not because of a competition, more so because they're not going to get as many looks at him throughout the season. So if he's potentially your future, get the opportunity to look at him now. That's what the Steelers, in my head, are doing, is what can Justin Fields bring to the field during training camp now that we could use as our inspection for next season when he's getting an opportunity to maybe resign. Who's been the biggest surprise? Beanie Bishop, easily the biggest surprise. I like Beanie Bishop, but he didn't look good at OTAs and minicamp. Looked like an undrafted guy, has come out here and balled out. So Beanie Bishop for sure. DeMarvin Leal has probably been my number two. Why would Russell Wilson lie about his calf or the Steelers lie about the calf? Seriously, I mean, that happens. Russell Wilson wouldn't, but the teams lie about that stuff all the time. Just a heads up. Just a heads up. It's not cool. I agree with you, but go watch go watch every single Mike Tomlin press conference throughout the season, and there are multiple times that he says things like, "Oh, I just give you guys something," or yeah, I said that, but I was just saying that to you guys. That wasn't really real." They surprisingly do that. It stinks, but they do that. Um, a lot of Justin Fields. People don't like that you criticize Justin Fields. How have the late round rookies look so far? Watts, Lee, Mason, etc. Early to judge Mason McCormick. Logan Lee had a good day today, broke up a pass, which was really cool to see. That was the first time that you noticed Logan Lee out there. Ryan Watts didn't have a good day. I will say Ryan Watts didn't have a good day. Had a couple of moments during special teams drills where he just, like, they were easy drills, like the soccer ball bouncing into the end zone and he just couldn't get his hands on it, or, threw him a pass and he dropped it. He didn't have a great day. Didn't have a great day. It's early, but Ryan Watts didn't have a great day. Do I think Troy Fautano will be starter ready by the preseason? I don't know. Too early to judge. Way too early to judge. And to be honest with you, I would go off of OTAs and minicamp of what I have seen so far. But because Beanie Bishop has come out here and looked really good, I'm going to hold off on that because you just never know how big that jump could be and how quickly it could come. And maybe Troy, like Beanie, is just waiting for training camp. So I'm going to hold off. But I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say no. Is Corey Trice practicing? How has he looked? Haven't really noticed him out there because he hasn't really made a play yet, but that'll come. Hopefully he is practicing. I believe he is a full-time participant out there. Ocho Cinco said in his podcast, tell the Steelers to give him a call. That would be so awesome. If Zach Azani doesn't understand that grown men don't need to be yelled at in order to get the point across, then Azani needs to go, not George Pickens. I'm not going to address that. I'm not going to address it. Percentage-wise, how much of the preseason snaps do you think Justin will get? More than half. More than half. I would say 75% of the snaps Justin Fields gets during the preseason. It's going to be Justin Fields heavy. And 60. Let's go 60% because Kyle Allen's going to get some reps. You want Kyle Allen to get in there. John Rice Plumlee might maybe gets a drive, maybe, but that fourth quarterback gets nothing. But a lot of Justin Fields. Russ isn't going to do anything in the preseason. Do you think Peyton Wilson will start next to Patrick Queen? I don't, but I do think he'll be the third guy off the bench. Landon Roberts is a stud, dude. He's a 10-year veteran. He knows how to play inside linebacker. He's as reliable as he gets, and he's a leader. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Landon is a captain this year. So I would say no, but essentially a starter next to Patrick Queen. The three of them are going to be so good. It's crazy. Do you think San Francisco more willing to trade Ayuk now that Trent Williams holding out and they got to pay him and Purdy now? I do. I think that pushes the needle for sure, but I don't know. And I don't think the Steelers are calling right now. They're going to let that situation figure itself out. San Francisco is in a hole, man. I'm not a San Francisco reporter. I don't know everything and all the ins and outs of that team, but it is, in my head, it is so hard from a distance to understand how you're going to pay all these guys and just go from there. Like, I just don't get it, how you're just like, oh, everybody's going to get a massive deal. No worries. How? Like, if it was one side of the ball, I get it, but it's both sides of the ball and you've already paid guys, and it just doesn't make any sense. You already have two wide receivers under contract. The other one's Christian McCaffrey, who's making wide receiver money. And then you have Deebo Samuel. It just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me. You can't have three of those contracts. You just can't. With Nick Herbig training with TJ Watt in the offseason, have you seen any further progression from him? Nick Herbig did have a good day today. Him and DeMarvin Leal were all over the football. I'm excited to see what Nick Herbig brings. Nick Herbig during OTAs and minicamp, like Terrell Austin told me that he's got all the signs of taking a massive year 2 leap. I think that was present today. He looks good. He does look good. Do you think Cam will retire after this year due to poor scheduling? No, I think Cam's got 2 years in him, and I expect a contract extension to come relatively soon because Omar certainly hinted at it yesterday. What would you do? You think the Steelers actually have a chance at Tyreek Hill? I don't know. What would it have to give up? A first round pick, easy. I mean, he was traded from Kansas City to the Dolphins for 2 first round picks. So you got to imagine it starts with one and some. I could maybe a first and a second. That's just a massive trade for a wide receiver at 30 years old, but maybe that's what you're giving up. I don't know. It's tough to say. Right now, I would say those are those are my guesses is a first and some. I wouldn't give up more than a first round pick, but I would imagine that's what you got to do. Steelers averaged 18 points per game on offense last year. Do you think they beat that? Yes. The golden rule to the Steelers is if you score more than 20 points a game, you should win. I believe the Steelers averaged 24 this year, somewhere around there. Scoring's down in the NFL. So, you can't expect a 30-point offense, but 24 points seems good to me. Is Patrick Freiermuth getting more? I keep calling him Patrick because all the like PR team and all the coaches call him Patrick, so it gets in my head. Getting more under the new, more work than under the old system. Yes, he actually said yesterday, somebody was like, "Hey, you ran this route a bunch of times. Does it feel good to run those routes?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's refreshing." So he is getting way more work. They're utilizing him so much more. This is awesome, Richard. Thank you. I appreciate you guys as always jumping on. I'm going to answer a couple more questions and then try to hit the road here so that I can make it home at some point, get some work done for you guys. I got some takeaways coming tomorrow and everything like that. So I'm pretty pumped. Nick will be back on Monday. So we could bust him all day on Monday. Um this is a great question. Why was Des Fitzpatrick the only wide receiver Russ didn't mention? Is he on the outside looking in? I went right up to Des, man. I went right up to Des yesterday and I said, "Hey man, did you hear the Russ answer about the wide receivers?" And he said, "Nah, why?" And I said, "Because he mentioned every single one of them on the team except for you." And he just smiled. He's like, "What the hell, man?" I was like, I don't know what happened, but I was cracking up. I don't think he's on the outside looking in. I like Dez. I think the Steelers like Dez. He's got to play special teams. I don't think he's a favorite to make the roster, but the Steelers like what he can bring. And I think at worst case, he's a special teams guy. He brings a lot of energy to this team, and they like him. Is there any position in particular that the Steelers should be looking for early round cuts to replace / upgrade? Wide receiver is the easy one. Anybody who gets cut that's a big name at wide receiver, they should 100% be looking to add. That would be my guess. Wide receiver and corner maybe, but wide receiver definitely. What if they did trade Alex Highsmith? Could TJ get JJ back on the field? Looking at pictures of TJ Watt or of JJ Watt, and I'm just guessing here. After guys retire, they get a little bit of the juice and then they feel real good because things are hurting. They don't want them to hurt. They want to continue to look as good, blah, blah, blah. I think JJ could come play some football, but I would imagine that JJ's got to get off some stuff before he could come play football. And that's all jokes. That's none of that serious. I don't want any accusations. I'm not making any accusations. I'm just saying that from what I hear, a lot of guys are like, "Oh, you know what? A little testosterone here and there, whatever." I got nothing to get drug tested for, so I would imagine that's the case. What are the players saying about the earlier start times? To be honest, what I have heard is that some guys don't know what they're doing. Like some guys in years past, you are just working all day and all night, and it's 9:00 by the time you're done, and then you got to be up bright and early the next day. The last 2 days, they're like, "Dude, we're done with meetings by like 7:00. I don't know what to do with myself." So I would imagine they're getting a little bored, but that's all right. Sharkies is right down the road, my friend. And for those of you who have been to training camp and haven't been to Sharkies, go to Sharkies. Go to Sharkies. Is it possible to get Devontae Adams? I would say no, but maybe. The problem with Devontae Adams is that if you cut him, is that his cap hit next year is like $46 million. And if you cut him, it cuts like $15 million, at least with Tyreek Hill. You have to come up with 30 million this year, but it's only 36 next year. So that makes some sense. And, then you could go from there and you'd have to cut him because I think after that, it's like $54 million. I actually have it right here. It's $56 million, which is just absolutely bonkers. But, that's That's where it makes sense for the first 2 years compared to Devontae. Just got in. What do the vibes feel like at camp? Is it the same as every year or anything different? Also, who are the biggest leaders you've seen out there so far? Biggest leaders is a good one. Landon Roberts is certainly on that list. Russ is definitely on that list. Najee's been pretty fired up. And Cam and TJ, as usual. And I would say Deshaun Elliott and Dante Jackson are definitely taking the reins as well, for sure. The vibes at camp, I mean, this year they're good. They're always kind of good. Like people don't come into camp real down, like, oh, this year is gonna stink, blah, blah, blah. Like, now people are pretty fired up. This year, it's still early. I want to see Russ out there, man. Put the pads on and get Russ out there, and then I'll tell you how the vibes are, because I would imagine they're rocking. Can we talk about Nick Herbig? Nick Herbig looked good today. They definitely looked good today. Thought he made a couple of plays. He looked really good during OTAs and minicamp. He's a name to watch for sure. Do you think it's possible the Steelers get Mike Evans? No, and I would say no for different reason in the past. My reason would be like, oh, you know, they wouldn't look at him, his contract, whatever. His contract makes sense. The situation makes sense. Baker Mayfield was on Pardon My Take like a week or two ago when I was watching it, and he was going on for 10 minutes about Mike Evans. And during that time, I was thinking, yeah, they're never going to trade him. He's going to be there forever. So I don't think they're ever getting rid of him. That would be awesome, though. How are the corners looking? Dante Jackson looks really good, like really good. There have been a couple borderline pass interferences, but he's looked really good. And Joey Porter looks good. I mean, we got to put pads on. You got to do the ones on ones. Tuesday when they're really shutting everybody down, that's when it's going to be good. But they look good. Beanie Bishop looks like a stud. So names to watch for sure. You heard it from Noah first. Steelers are trading for Patrick Mahomes or Surtain. You did not hear that from me. Appreciate you, but you did not hear that from me. Noah, when do the pads go on Tuesday? Are you allowed to record and post videos? I am actually allowed to record and post videos for the most part. Like, I believe backs on backers. I don't know, to be honest with you. That being said, I will find them and I will find out for sure before Tuesday, but I will make sure that somewhere, whether it's on my Twitter, whether it's in a post on all Steelers on SI, wherever, this fly is getting me, man. He's getting me. Um there will be videos of contact, especially backs on backers. I'm getting mixed signals. How did the offense look? It looked hit or miss. Mixed signals would be the right word. It would definitely be the right word. It's mixed signals the last 2 days. Good plays and bad plays. Running plays look good, but there are no pads on. But I would say mixed signals is the word. Justin Fields looks good one play, he looks bad the next. Today he looked good on more plays than he looked bad. Yesterday he looked bad on more plays than he looked good. Kyle Allen looks good. The wide receivers, nobody's really stood out except for Pat Fryermuth. Roman Wilson today for sure, but wouldn't say he's wide receiver 2 standing out, just taking a step forward, standing out. But mixed signals is a good one. Do you think Jeremiah Moon has a shot to make this team? This is a good question, Gary. Yes, I do. I think he's the favorite as the outside linebacker 4. They like him. He's super big and athletic. Like, this man's ridiculously tall and lengthy. So I would imagine he's good at special teams. Does have a shot to make the roster. I'd say a pretty good one right now, too. The narrative against Russ will continue to build as long as he's not out there. When is he coming out? I agree with this. And I think it's nonsense, because if anybody who's building that narrative, and there's a lot of them in the national media that are building this narrative, I don't watch ESPN during this time of year because it's wild to me, the difference between seeing 3 clips on Twitter and actually being on the practice field. Like, anybody who's getting all their news from ESPN or and I'm not talking Brooke Pryor ESPN, I'm talking like national, Get Up, First Take, whatever. If you're getting your news from there and you're getting your opinions from there, like, they're not the people that you should be watching. There are so many out there who, this fly, man, who are here every day for every rep, and it changes so constantly. So those are the people you should be getting your news from. But I agree with you. It continues to build. And I don't know when he's going to come back, but I'll tell you this. I expect that when Russ does come back, it does not take long for everybody who is a real fan, who is really there, who is really watching to say, oh, yep, nope, Russ looks like the better quarterback. That's fine. So I don't think it's going to last super long. Um, all right. I think with that said, we answered all the questions. This has been a blast, guys. Thank you guys so much for jumping on. This is hopefully my last solo pod of training camp. Nick will be back on Monday. I'm going to head out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcast. I swear, if this fly is still here next week, I'm going to lose my mind. Find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. Enjoy a wonderful weekend and continue to check out updates throughout training camp until Monday. With that said, enjoy a beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.